All right, I think we're almost there. Just took me a while to get on the live here. Asked me to do a two-step verification like twice. Okay. Shalom, everyone. Shabbat shalom. I'm Brother Doug, and I'm with my mom, Sister Sharon, Brother Yahusha, and Sister Marissa. Brother Dennis is also with us. We are the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship and Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah. So today we are going to be doing um, a particular type of study today. Just bear with me for a second. I'm trying to find a hat or something. My hair is getting a little crazy today. All right, so we're going to be continuing our um, chapter by chapter, book by book studies, and we're going to be going into. Let me just get this up here. Let me get my word software up. So we're going to be doing a chapter by chapter, book by book study of Second Kings. I think I'll start us off. Just hold on a second, guys. We'll get going here. Just move this bar up here. Second Kings 13. No, 15. Okay, 15 here. And hold on a second. Just get my coffee. All right. Okay. Mm, Uh, hold on a second, guys. Let me just get myself water just in case it get parched. Okay. Ooh, sorry about that. All right. In the 27th year of Jeroboam, king of Yashrael, Azariah, son of Amaziah, reigned as king of Yehuda. He was 16 years old when he had begun to reign. He reigned for 52 years in Jerusalem. The name of his mother was Yekoliah of Jerusalem. And he did what was pleasing before Yahuwah. He did what was pleasing before Yahuwah in according with all that his father Amaziah did. Yet truly he did not demolish the high places. And still the people were sacrificing and burning incense in the high places. Verse 5, now Yahuwah struck the king and became a leper even until this day, or even until the day of his death. And he was living in a separate house by himself. Truly Jotham, the son of the king, governed the palace, and he rightly ruled the people of the land. Now, the rest of the words of Azariah and all that he did, have these not been written in the book of the words of the days of the kings of Yahudah? I'm going to keep going. I don't want to expand yet until we're at least a little bit further through the chapter, but I do want to just write that down real quick of that reference. Second Kings 15, 6. Look. Just skim up real quick. All right, moving on. Verse 7. Azariah slept with his fathers, and they buried him with his ancestors in the city of Daud, and Utham, his son, reigned in his place. In the 38th year of Azariah, no, Zechariah, the son of Jeroboam, reigned over Yashrael in Samaria for 6 months. Okay, so we got 6 months here. Okay. It's going to take a stop and write down some references here that we'll get back to a little bit later. Okay, moving on. Verse 9, and he did what was evil before you. He did not withdraw from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who caused Yasharal to sin. And then Shallum, the son of Yabesh, conspired against him. He struck him openly, killed him. He reigned in his place. All right. Just sit down for a second. All right. Now, the rest of the words of Zechariah, have these not been written in the book of the words of the days of the kings of Yasharal? Okay. Definitely want to go back to that and discuss which Zechariah this might be. Moving on. This was the word of Yahuwah which he spoke to Yahu, saying, your sons, even to the fourth generation, shall sit upon the throne of Yashrael. So it happened. And Shallum, the son of Yabesh, reigned in the 39th year of Azariah. Okay, this is going to get a little weird. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think we've gone far enough. We're going to start looking at some of these things here. Definitely want to stop at verse 13 here. So right here we have Azariah is mentioned as the king, that it's in the 39th year, which is very weird because the other versions, like the Masoretic, uh, will say Uzziah. So this is definitely a weird difference here. So you have the LXX, the Septuagint, and the Vulgate both agreeing that it's Azariah instead of Uzziah. Now, I don't know, maybe someone knows history a little bit better than me here, but at this point, which would make more sense? Like Isaiah 1 mom, when would that actually take place?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think about.
Let me look something up here, guys. Bear with me here. You might hear a little bit of noise on this browser.
It could be the same time period. I'm trying to think. Isaiah was like mid-70s.
Isaiah 1. Let me see here. Bible Hub. I know this is not going to be a perfect timeline, but at least it's going to give us an idea of when Isaiah 1 would have been written. Because that's going to tell us whether Uzziah would be the king or not.
Mm-hmm.
That is mentioned in Second Kings here. Because this is very weird.
Some people just consider them to be the same king.
Really?
Looking at biblical hermeneutic stack exchange, are Uzziah and Azariah the name of the same king? They're not really agreed on it. You just have different people that some say yes, that might give their reasoning.
Interesting.
But I think those are just their own
Hmm.
I don't think it really tells you whether they are.
It's just weird because usually they use Uzziah when they're talking about Uzziah. It's just very weird for it to only be Azariah in one place. Because usually it will say Uzziah if it's talking about him. For example, I'll just show you what I mean by this. If you go to Isaiah chapter 1, all versions are going to say Uzziah. So to me, that would be very weird.
Azariah is in. Okay, so one of the reasonings they're giving is the chronicler's consistent use of Uzziah in this chapter may be to facilitate distinguishing the king from the high priest Azariah. Um, I would like go look at the other accounts
Mm.
because it seems like I'm guessing that this person is also pulling from the Masoretic. Second Chronicles 26 has him as Uzziah. Second Kings 15 has him as Azariah.
Hmm. Hmm. Very weird.
Same king, but two different
Because
kings in the Masoretic.
yeah, I'm looking at Isaiah chapter 1. Every version has it as Uzziah.
Yeah.
So I would find it very weird that it's gonna all three accounts would have him there as Uzziah, and then all of a sudden they're caught
Are you
interchangeably.
looking at you're looking at both accounts within the Septuagint, or you're looking at both accounts
Yeah,
within the
all
Masoretic?
actually all three. Yeah, I'm looking at the Vulgate, Septuagint, and Masoretic.
No, I'm talking about the accounts, not the translations. Like you have an account in Kings, and then you have an account in
Okay, which one in
Second
Chronicles was
Chronicles.
that?
Um, we were so I would look at Second Chronicles. Um, what chapter are we on? Um, wherever we were at in Chronicles, and then also Second Kings 15.
Yeah, Second Kings 15 is where we were at. Let me see.
Okay, I'm
Maybe
sorry. We were. You're right. Second Chronicles 26. Sorry,
it's okay.
we were in
Let
Chronicles.
me see here. Yeah, all three say oh okay. It actually says Uzziah all three times.
Yeah, inside the Septuagint, right?
The Vulgate, LXX, and Masoretic for this verse all say Uzziah and not. It actually says his father. Never mind. Azariah is a different person. I was going to say it says his father's Amaziah and his this Uzziah is the one being talked about as king. It says Uzziah in all three. So that's why I'm getting confused what they mean by that the other name would have been interchangeable because I don't
But
see that.
if the so I'm saying if the let's just Second Chronicles 26 Septuagint Uzziah, right? But then when you go to Second Kings 14 Septuagint Azariah,
Huh.
talking
I
about the
don't.
same person because the
Hmm.
16 years old, his father was Amaziah. Um,
Okay.
so both
Uh,
one in the Septuagint. So in the Septuagint and Chronicles, it uses Uzziah. In the Septuagint and Kings, it uses Azariah. I think that both places in the Masoretic uses Azariah, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah.
or
They
Uzziah.
probably in their mind thought it was a error, so they decided to change it to Azariah in the second account. That's probably why the Masoretes did that. They figured that the Septuagint authors somehow made a mistake by calling them both Uzziah and Azariah, so they changed it. I guess I don't know, something like that is probably why that's in the Masoretic that way. Um,
Oh
Now,
no,
chapter 14 of Second Kings, where does it mention him as Azariah in the Septuagint?
2 Kings 15, verse
Oh,
1.
15. Okay.
2
So I was
Kings
trying to look at
15, verse
14.
1, Azariah
Yeah.
in the
Okay, I
Septuagint,
see.
and in the Masoretic, and then for Second Chronicles, Uzziah in the Septuagint, and okay, I take that back. Both the Masoretic and the Septuagint use Uzziah in Second Chronicles 26, and they use Azariah in Second Kings.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. What's weird too is that there's an Azariah who's the son of I guess that would be Udad. So there's maybe there's another Azariah. That's a weird thing too in Second Chronicles 15. So that's weird. So that's the reason why I was confused this whole time about the Azariah Uzziah things because I know
Oh
there's
no,
been
not Second Chronicles 15. Second
yeah.
Chronicles 26 is where I was at. Oh, I
Okay.
see what you're just talking about. This Azariah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is a different Azariah because it's given him a different father.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a different one. So there's multiple Azariahs there. Okay. I could see why then they named him they used the name Uzziah a lot to differ it could be a tradition to differentiate that if they were to use the name Azariah a lot, it would confuse people. Probably that's why the Septuagint does that a lot. Use it as Uzziah instead. It might be to not confuse people.
Oh no, both of them are doing it.
Okay.
The Where the Septuagint says Uzziah, the Masoretic says Uzziah. That's what I meant. I had to correct myself.
What's
Where
weird to
the
me is that this is the first time I've ever came across this. Almost the majority of the time I always saw it as Uzziah, like even Isaiah 1. If that's the same Uzziah, they universally call him Uzziah in that verse. So it's very weird. It's just weird to me how they're picking and choosing when to call him Azariah, I guess. It's just weird to me.
This is the first time you come across it.
Yeah. This is
Mandela effect.
yeah, this is the no, I really do think this is the first time I came across something like this because I always thought he only had one name, so I never knew that he was alternatively called Azariah. That's something I never knew. So that's interesting. So I guess if that's the case, then Second Kings 15 would be at the same time as Isaiah 1, then, if that's the same Uzziah. So that's just something that stumped me a little bit. I wonder what Zechariah is being talked about here in verse 11.
I
If
don't
this is
think that it's the prophet just because it lists him as a king.
yeah, so if that's the case, then I guess Zechariah would have lived around the time of Second Kings 15. That would be kind of interesting. That means Zechariah is a very early prophet then. Um,
Oh no,
so
I said I don't think he's a king.
oh, you don't think?
I
Oh,
don't think he's the prophet.
okay, my bad. I
So that
misheard
would
you.
mean that Zechariah the prophet was a king, which I guess is not
Yeah,
beyond the scope of possibility, but
yeah.
not something
Because
we
I
can.
was thinking it had to be a different Zechariah, just how early Second Kings is. It just wouldn't line up right to
I agree.
especially. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I just said I agree.
Yeah, because most timelines for people watching, most timelines I see for the Book of Zechariah, it's like what mom like 650 700 BC, something like that. It's not too prior to it's only like 100 years prior to the captivity. So let me just see if I can get it on the screen here. This Bible Hub timeline. So let's here. It's like go to Zechariah here. It's actually a decent bit after Second Kings. Zephaniah is actually prior to it. Zephaniah is 638. Trying to remember when Zechariah actually. Oh, Zechariah's late. Whoa. Okay, 520. Wow. So yeah, Zechariah would have been more along the time of like the book of Ezra, supposedly, or right after Haggai, pretty much. So you have um you have Ezra 5 and then these other two prophets around the same time. So yeah. So there, yeah, it's very unlikely. That's what me and Brother Yahushua are trying to say. It's no. All right. So going back, um, let me see here. So we're on verse 13, right? So let's go back to 2 Kings 15. Now let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to mention before continuing here. So verse 8 has a bunch of cross references. 2 Kings 10, verse 30, Proverbs 28, verse 2, and Amos, however you want to pronounce that, Amos 7, verse 9. So those are the cross references the ESV give me for verse 8 there. Um, so let's see. So verse 6, I also had an interesting footnote real quick before we continue. Uh, verse 6, I had, let's see, it said, now the rest of the words of Azariah and all these are these not written in the book of the words of the days of the kings of Yehuda? Now this I would assume be referring to the book of Chronicles because other versions are more literal and it says the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yehuda. So just for any of those wondering, this is not an apocryphal book being talked about. This would be the book of Chronicles. So just FYI. All right, I think other than that, we can go on. We can continue.
Actually, there was a hold on. There was a place in the beginning I wanted to. Actually, I'll wait. I'll wait until we finish because there's a place in the beginning that kind of correlates with the end. So never mind.
Yeah, here. So Shalom, the son of Yabesh, began to reign in 39th year of Uzziah. Okay, that's what we already talked about that. Reigned 1 month in Samaria. Verse 14. Menahem, the son of Gadi, came up from Tirzah and came to Samaria and struck down Shalom, the son of Yabesh, in Samaria and put him to death and reigned in his place. So we have a reference here that we'll get back to later. Now, the rest of the deeds of Shalom and the conspiracy that he made, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles and the Kings of Yashraal. Okay, at that time, Menahem sacked Tipsah or Tipsah and all who were in it in its territory from Tirzah on because they did not open it to him. Therefore, he sacked it and he ripped open all the women who were pregnant. So this is, yeah, in those times, they a lot of the times that would happen. In the 39th year of Azariah, king of Yehuda, Mahanaim, the son of Gadi, began to reign over Yasharel. He reigned 10 years in Samaria. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. He did not depart from his all his days from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Yasharel to sin. Pul, the king of Assyria, came against the land, and Menahem gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver that he might help him to confirm his so he gave him Pul 1,000 talents of silver that he might help him to confirm his hold on the royal power. Now there's a bunch of Second Chronicles 30 verse 6, Psalms 83 verse 8, Ezekiel 23:5, and Hosea 5:13. If we have time after we finish this chapter, we might go through some of those. Mahanaim exacted the money from Yasharel, that is, from all the wealthy men, 50 shekels of silver, every man to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. Now, the rest of the deeds of Mahanaim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Yasharel? So again, we hear reference of the book of the Chronicles. Okay, so verse 22, Mahanaim slept with his fathers. Pekahiah, his son, reigned in his place. Verse 23, in the 50th year of Azariah, king of Yehuda, Pekaniah, the son of Mahanaim, began to reign over Yasharel in Samaria and reigned 2 years. He did what was evil in the sight of Yahuwah. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he made Yasharel to sin. No, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, his captain, conspired against him with 50 men of the people of Gilead and struck him down in Samaria and the citadel of the king's house with Argob and Ariah. He put to death and reigned in his place. That was verse 25 there. Okay, hold on a second. Just want to write all this stuff down. Ooh. Excuse me, guys, got a little heartburn here. All right. Now the rest of the deeds of Pekaniah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yasharel. Again, we have Chronicles being mentioned. In the 50th or 52nd year of Azariah, king of Yehuda, Pekah, the son of Remaliah, began to reign over Yasharel in Samaria. And he reigned 20 years. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahuwah, verse 28. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he made Yashrael to sin. So now we're going to be at verse 29 here. Okay. In the days of Pekah, king of Yashrael, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured Elion, Abel, Beth Maacah, Yanua, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, Galilee, and all the land of Naphtali. He carried the people captive to Assyria. So this is an important, like, you want to talk about a bookmark or a book stamp here. This is an important part of their history here. So you have, what's this guy's name? Tiglath-Pileser. Okay, let me see. Probably butchering the guy's name here, but Tiglath-Pileser is the Assyrian king that takes the northern house captive. So maybe afterwards, after we finish the chapter, we could go into who this guy is, and all that. So let's see here. And there's tons of references to him here. Obviously, we got the second Samuel. No.
You're muted.
Okay. Am I muted? Really?
Oh,
Interesting.
oh no. Maybe you're not. Maybe you weren't talking. It looked like you were talking.
Yeah. I know it's very seldom, so yeah. Uh Sorry about that, guys. Just a lot of cross references to write down here. Uh, there's a lot of them. So we're finally getting into the captivity time period. Then Hoshea, son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, struck him down, put him to death, and reigned in his place. Interesting. So we have another Husha. Interesting. Yeah, I don't remember this guy. I seriously doubt it's the prophet Hosea. I seriously doubt that. Or Husha. So he reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, the son of Uzziah. All right, so we have. Okay, so we're about to be at verse 31 here. I'm just writing down some notes here. We'll move on. Okay, now the rest of the acts of Pekah. No. Oh, my bad. Whoops. Scaled down a little too fast. Now the rest of the acts of Pekah and all that he did, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Yashar. So again, we have a reference to the book of Chronicles here. Jotham reigns in Yehuda, and in the second year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Yashar, Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Yehuda, began to reign. So we're about to be at verse 33 here, but again, I just want to write down all these cross references real quick. Second Kings. First Chronicles. Okay. He was 25 years. Now I have a little, let's see here. I'm going to have to fix that footnote thing for ESV. It keeps showing up as the ABP. I'm going to have to fix that. He was 25 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Yarusha, daughter of Zadok. That is interesting. So you have partial Levite, partial Yahudim king. So it's interesting. That might be something to write down. So verse 33. Half Levite, half Judean king. It's just weird. You don't see that a lot. Verse 34, he did what was pleasing before Yahuwah in accord with all that his father Uzziah had done. So he did. Surely he did not take away the high places. Still the people were immolating, sacrificing, and made offerings on the high places. He built the upper gate of the house of Yahuwah. It's interesting. The Vulgate adds here to be very sublime. What would be a better word for sublime? Like esteemed?
Guess, yeah.
Let me look up the word sublime. It's interesting. They have that added a little bit. Sublime etymology. Just want to see what this word comes from. Obviously, it's Latin origin. Oh, why did that? Yeah, to esteem. High up. Yeah, so I would say a better word for that in the Vulgate would be to esteem or magnify.
So it has nothing to do with limes.
Yeah, no, sublime is like it's really a bad translation in Latin there for what it's trying to say in the Hebrew that Jerome used. Is probably saying that it was lifted up, it was magnified, that his house was Yahuwah's house was magnified, is what it's actually trying to say. Yeah, I know about them. An old friend that passed away recently was a big fan of theirs. I know about them. Yeah, they're Jamaican reggae type of rock band. Yeah. I don't know if you would call them rock, actually. They were a little too slow to be considered, I guess, rock or metal. They were just more like a reggae group. But yeah, I've heard of them. Um, in those days, Yahuwah began to send into Yehuda Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah. Now, this is interesting. A little wording difference. This is interesting. This it seems like the Vulgate is saying he was sent into Judah rather than against Judah. I find that it could be a mistranslation in the English, possibly. Yeah, because the LXX is even saying against Judah. So it's hard to in these areas where you don't have a concordance for the Vulgate, like you're at the mercy of the translator. And so unless I have another Vulgate, let me just see something.
Well, I mean, into really wouldn't make sense. I mean, like what Yahuwah would just be sending the king of Syria and the king of I'm guessing that would be the king of uh okay, so you have two different kings, the king of Syria and the king of whatever that other king. I'm guessing that would be Israel at the time, right? Pekah was ruling over Israel. So yeah, like why else would they be going except to make war? Why would it even mention that?
Yeah, yeah. There it's just weird how all the other versions say against unless there's something messing up with the Greek or the Hebrew because they're possibly a mistranslation with the Bretons and the ESV. I think both of them say against. So let me just see here if I can look at the Greek if there's a mistranslation because sometimes that happens where the word for Greek word for against or in could be the same exact word, and they could mis translate or misunderstand it depending on the context. Let me just see. I'm going to look this up in the eSword here. Verse 37. It could be a manuscript difference. It's possible, but I think ultimately when words like this get translated, it's very easily to get mistranslated. The Greek language is so nuanced too. It's very easy for this to happen. Let's see here. Yeah, so the Greek word here is kgs17-17. A relation of rest. Well, in that context, that would mean resting somewhere. You're sojourning somewhere. You're not going against it. If that's the primary definition, that would line up with what the Vulgate says that he went into. So I don't know exactly where I like I said, words like this could have multiple meanings depending on the context. It's very easy for them to misconstrue this. So again, this Greek word can mean in, on, by, after, against. It's a generic Greek word. So this is what happens when, you got these so-called scholars that think they know Greek and think they know Hebrew, and then they screw up. So that's where that's why like translators, honestly, I'm in preference for translators that take into consideration the context of a verse rather than just the word itself that they're translating. So like they're translating an isolated word here, trying to figure out what it is. And you have to play a guessing game at this point if you don't look at the context. There's like 30 different definitions to this one word. So I would agree with Brother Yahusha that it has to be in. I think the primary definition would even link it up that it should say that he went into Judah instead of against. So against was actually, it seems like it's a mistranslation of these English translators of the Septuagint and of the Masoretic text is what it seems like what happened.
Oh no, I was actually siding with against, not
Oh,
in.
Oh,
Because I
okay.
mean, like it just for them to go in, what are they going in for? Why would
Yeah.
Yahuwah like?
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. What's interesting is the Hebrew doesn't even have it. This is something I didn't notice before. They only have the word send. So against is like added there. Even though it's there in the Greek, it's not there in the Hebrew. Unless the King James screwed up, because that's what it's showing here is that there's no Strong's number for it. That would be very weird if it's not there at all. But yeah, so I guess against is correct. So my bad about that. Yeah, I guess against would be it would make sense, especially if it's talking about the Assyrian king. It would make sense that he's going against Jerusalem. So yeah, yeah, especially since it's talking about Yahuwah here, that would make the most sense. So that's about it for chapter 15. We also have the last verse here. Jotham slept with his fathers. He was buried with his fathers in the city of Daud. His father, meaning ancestor in that context. Ahaz, his son, reigned in his stead. So now we get to Ahaz. This is going to be that wicked, wicked king. King Ahaz, who I believe this would have been the same Ahaz who marries Isabel, if I'm not mistaken. So now you're into the timeline of this wicked, beta male king that let a wicked woman run him.
I think
And
that was Ahab.
Ahab.
I think that was
oh,
a
Ahab,
little.
my bad.
That was a while back.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
So Ahaz, I want to know a little bit more since we're practically done with the chapter. Let me look at up Ahaz. I want to see what type of king he was. To get
Before we move to the next chapter, I did want to touch on something though.
okay. Whoops. Go ahead.
So you see in like the very first part of the chapter, right? It says, um, so this is speaking of Azaryahu. Um, he did that which is right in the eyes of Yahweh, according to all things that Amaziah his father did. Only he took not away any of the high places. As yet, the people offered and burnt incense on the high places. And Yahuwah plagued the king, and he was leprous till the day of his death. So, and then also at the end of it, you have um, he did that which was right in the sight of Yahweh according to all things that his father Azaryahu did. Nevertheless, he took not away the high places, so on and so forth. And the rest of the acts of, and then it says, in those days, Yahweh began to send forth against Yehuda. So you have these two kings that are like acting in righteousness and doing everything right before Yehovah. The only thing that they didn't do was tear down, remove the high places, um, which you have a lot of other righteous kings before them that did everything right, but didn't remove the high places as well. But these are like the first two kings that we see getting um, either two things that I could see here. Either they're now actually getting disciplined for not, removing the high places, like Yahuwah was merciful for a time up until, finally now he's not. Or he could just be pouring out judgment from, his just prolonged judgment against Yashral as a whole. But you see these two righteous kings, and yet they're one is struck with leprosy, and the other one, has Syria and Israel coming against him. So kind of like a Job type thing going on here. Oh, you're muted.
It's weird. For some reason it wasn't allowing me to unmute for like a couple seconds. Okay. Um so yeah, Ahaz, this guy that we're getting into, he seems to be a wicked king from what I'm looking at here. He's seems to be somehow related to Hezekiah here. Let me see here. What would a vassal mean, Mom? Like a Syrian vassal?
Look that up. I really don't know. Vassel.
No, a vassal,
Vassal.
not vessel,
All right.
vassal.
Okay.
Yeah. Retainer. How would that make sense? A Assyrian retainer. What does that mean? Oh, servant.
Oh, right.
Okay. This is why I look these things up because I'm trying to understand what it's
Yeah.
saying here.
Yeah. I remember
So-
that one not too long
So
ago.
he would be subjected to Assyria. So he was a servant of Assyria at the time of Tiglath-Pileser. Yeah, so it looks like he betrayed Israel and served Assyria. Yeah. Interesting. S-
I'm just wondering one thing. I just want to throw it in there, for thought. Sometimes it says he did not do what was right in the eyes of Yahuwah, and sometimes it says he did evil. So I don't know. It's hard to know what the difference is between those two things. You know what I mean? Like this guy, Ahaz, he did not, in my version anyway, it says he did not do what was right in the eyes. And then there's another king coming up in the next chapter or so where it says he did evil. So I just wonder what, the real difference is there. I guess degrees, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this guy seems to have done some really wicked things, and all it says is he did not do what was right in the eyes of Yahuwah, his Elohim, as his father David had done.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, he definitely did. He well, he already, like I said, turned against his people. He served Assyria.
Yeah.
That's already a big sin there.
Yeah.
So he would have been basically betraying Israel. He passed his son through the fire. There's a lot of things he would have done.
Yeah, true. So I was just wondering why it said that, it wouldn't have said that he did evil, but whatever,
No, it does. It says he did evil. That's what it says.
My version doesn't. My version says he did not do what was right.
Yeah, I mean, he did evil.
Oh, well, there's other spots where it says evil, though.
No, it's the same thing.
Okay.
To not do, like, you got to understand from a biblical perspective, when you do not do what's right in Yahuwah's eyes, you're doing evil. It's one and the same. If he did righteousness, he would do what was right. You see the wording there?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do what was right. So I mean, he did not do what was right. He did evil in his sight. It's
okay.
It's what you call a synonym, Mom. It's a verbal synonym to say to not do what is right in Yahuwah's eyes. By definition, biblically, means you did evil in his sight. You sinned. It's the same thing. There's no difference. It's not like less evil. Like Yahuwah doesn't look at sin like the way we look at it. We try to say, "Oh, that's less sinful. I'm less sinful." No, you did what was evil in his eyes. It's all a generic terminology. So whenever it says he didn't do what was right in Yahuwah's eyes, that's the biblical definition of doing evil. So it doesn't have to say do evil in his eyes. We as the reader are supposed to rightfully assume that it's the same thing as doing evil in his eyes. So don't get caught up with the semantics and the wording. It's the same thing. So, but yes, he was a very evil king from what I've looked up. Very evil. He betrayed Israel, served Assyria, you found out he passed his son through the fire. There's a lot of things that he probably did that was unrighteous. So anyway, that's who we're about to find out about. So let's see here. So now we're about to be at chapter 16. So I think, let me just make sure there wasn't any notes I forgot to go through here. We already touched on Tiglath-Pileser, verse 29. We already did that. Yeah. Okay, here. So there's a lot of let's see here. A lot of cross references here. Verse 25, you have Hosea 7:7. Verse 27, you have 2 Chronicles 28, verse 6 as a reference. Verse 29, all right, we already talked about Tiglath-Pileser. But there's also references in verse 29 to 2 Samuel 20, verse 14, 1 Kings 14, verse 15, 2 Kings 16:10, which we're about to read chapter 16, 2 Kings 17:10, 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 22, 2 Chronicles 30, verse 6, Ezekiel 23, verse 9, Hosea like 1 verse 5. All of those are references, by the way, for second whoops, I don't know why it says Second Chronicles here. 2 Kings 15:29. So 2 Kings 15:29, all those references I just read are for Tiglath-Pileser, where you can find them in other places. 2 Kings 15, verse 30. You also have, I'm trying to read my writing here. 2 Chronicles 3, verse 12. Not 2 Chronicles, my bad. 1 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 12. Hosea 7:7. Amos 1:1. And I think they also had a reference for some reason for 2 Kings 15:1. 2 Kings 15, verse 32 had a reference for 2 Kings 15:1 again. 1 Chronicles 15:17, Isaiah 1:1. Okay, so that's everything I have written down here. So basically the gist of it is that in the past chapter we had a bunch of different kings going through, most of them wicked. And now we're at this guy Ahaz. So we're about to read about this guy Ahaz. Do you want someone else to read so you have time to
No,
eat?
I'm okay.
So-
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, so
Whenever you're ready, Mom.
in the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliahu, Ahaz, son of Jotham, sovereign of Yehuda, began to reign. Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. And he did not do what was right in the eyes of Yahuwah, his Elohim, as his father David had done. But he walked in the way of the sovereigns of Yashrael, and he also made his son pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahuwah had dispossessed from before the children of Yashrael. And he slaughtered and burned incense on the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. Then Retzin, sovereign of Aram, and Pekah, son of Ramaliahu, sovereign of Yisrael, came up to Jerusalem to battle. And they besieged Ahaz, but were unable to overcome him. At that time, Retzin, sovereign of Aram, recovered Eilat for Aram and drove the men of Yehuda from Eilat. And the Edomites went to Eilat and have dwelt there to this day. And Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, sovereign of Ashur, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and save me from the hand of the sovereign of Aram and from the hand of the sovereign of Israel, who are rising up against me. And Ahaz took the silver and gold that was found in the house of Yahuwah and in the treasuries of the house of the sovereign, and sent it as a present to the sovereign of Ashur. And the sovereign of Ashur listened to him, and the sovereign of Ashur went up against Damascus and captured it. I don't know if that's Damascus or what, but Damascus, and captured it and exiled it to Kir, and he killed Retzin. And sovereign Ahaz went to meet Tiglath-Pileser, sovereign of Ashur, at Damascus, and saw a slaughter place that was at Damascus. And sovereign Ahaz sent to Uriah the priest a sketch of the slaughter place and its pattern according to all its workmanship. And Uriah the priest built a slaughter place according to all that sovereign Ahaz had sent from Damascus, and Uriah the priest made it before sovereign Ahaz came from Damascus. And when the sovereign came from Damascus, the sovereign saw the slaughter place, and the sovereign approached the slaughter place and made offerings on it. And he burned his ascending offering and his grain offering, and he poured his drink offering and sprinkled the blood of his peace offerings on the slaughter place. And the bronze slaughter place, which was before Yahuwah, he brought from the front of the house, from between the new slaughter place and the house of Yahuwah, and put it on the north side of his slaughter place. And sovereign Ahaz commanded Uriah the priest, saying, on the great slaughter place, burn the morning ascending offering and the evening grain offering, and the sovereign's ascending offering, and his grain offering, with the ascending offering of all the people of the land, and their grain offering and their drink offerings. And sprinkle on it all the blood of the ascending offering and all the blood of the slaughtering. And the bronze slaughter place is for me to inquire by. And Uriah the priest did according to all that sovereign Ahaz commanded. And sovereign Ahaz cut off the side panels of the stands and removed the basins from them. And he took down the sea from the bronze oxen that were under it, and put it on a pavement of stones. And the covered way, which they had built in the house for the Shabbat, and the sovereign's outer entrance, he took from the house of Yahuwah, because of the sovereign of Asher. And the rest of the acts of Ahaz, which he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the sovereigns of Yehuda? So Ahaz slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David, and Hitzkiyahu, his son, reigned in his place.
Geez, this guy just said, let me go into the house of Yahuwah and do a makeover on it. Build what I want and tear down what I don't want in there.
Mm.
Hmm. So we have verse 3, you have all these cross references here about the abominations of the nations that Yahuwah dispossessed. In 16 verse 3, we have 2 Kings 17:8 mentioned. 2 Kings 17:17. Psalms 106:37. Micah 6:7. All right. Under every green tree, there's another reference here. Basically, the Christmas tree is what this is talking about. Second Chronicles 25, Second Chronicles 26. Isaiah 7:1, Ezekiel 16:57. So one thing I would do next time when I'm going through my yearly readings is that I would actually start Isaiah and some of these prophets once you get like halfway through Second Kings, because
Yeah.
most of these prophets are like paralleling with Second Kings 15 and 14. Uh, Elath and the Edomites from so men of you came to Elath where they dwell to this day. Kind of interesting when you think about it. So you already have the Edomites in the land of Israel at that point. I kind of find that interesting. That could be a future study about how you would get Edomite, Japhethite, Ashkenazi Khazars in the land today when you already had Edomites in the land back then, roughly around 700 BC. You would have already had some Edomites already there. So, by the way, there's also a claim that Herod was an Edomite king of Israel. So you would have had an Edomite ruling Israel um, around the time of Messiah coming to the earth. So, anyway. And I kind of wonder how Yahuwah looks at that, because he doesn't really recognize Gentiles usually as the kings of his people. That covenant was never meant to be for Gentiles. It was meant to be for the line of Judah, was to be kings over his people. So I don't know if Yahuwah would even recognize Herod as a legitimate king of his people when you understand what the covenant in context, who it was for. It was not for any general believer to be a king of Israel. It was for a ethnic Judean to be a king of Israel. So that I kind of wonder how Yahuwah looks at the whole Herod thing and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think they never even called him a king, right? They called him a tetrarch.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, they never acknowledged Herod as their king, as far as I remember.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But I don't think the Israel ever acknowledged him as their king.
No, he just basically took the spot because his father had died and he was next in line.
Yeah. Let's see here. You are attacking me. So we have another bunch of cross references here for this guy who subjects himself under Tegla-Pileser. Okay, so Second Chronicles 28:20. Isaiah 2:6. Isaiah 10:20. And Ezekiel 16:28. Feeling better, Ma?
Yeah, it's coming up. It's starting to come up.
Yeah, I might need to eat soon too. Okay. So there's cross references from verse 8 as well. Kings 18:15. Second Chronicles 28:21. Definitely. And the king of Assyria listened to him. The king of Assyria marched up against Damascus and took it, and carrying its people captive to Kir, and he killed Rezin. Okay, I want to start skimming down here. Just okay. So there's verse 10. There is a cross reference to Isaiah 2:6. Uriah the priest built an altar. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Seems like it stayed that way in the time of the New Testament, is what it seems to be linking up. As far as the way this king rearranged the temple, because in see here, there's a reference here from verse 14. You have verse 15. Matthew. Hmm. All right, Uriah the priest. Okay. Certain references from verse 15 about the bronze altar.
I just ask a little question. What is the Damascus place? Is that Damascus?
Yeah,
Okay,
It might be.
I'm not sure because I'm using the new Bible, so I'm not yet sure exactly what some of these things are. Okay, that's what I thought maybe.
yeah.
So a lot of different areas attacking, right?
Mm-hmm. Verse 15, there's references for the temple and all the altars and everything. We have Exodus 29:39, Isaiah 8, verse 2. Okay. Yeah, so it seems like this guy was just like trying to make the temple his own house because he's constantly removing things.
Yeah. Thinking of slaughtered place.
Mm-hmm. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles, Kings of Yehuda? Ahaz slept with his fathers and was buried in his fathers with his fathers in the city of Daud. Hezekiah was his son. Okay, reigned in his place, so that's probably going to be a big deal there. So Hezekiah is the son of Ahaz. All right. I think we're at the last chapter here. So, Brother Dennis, if you're able, could you possibly read chapter 17 for us?
Oh, let's see. Oh, chapter 17. Okay, can you hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. In the 12th month, Ahaz, sovereign of Yehuda, Hoshea, son of Elah, began to reign over Yisrael and Shomron for 9 years. And he did evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, but not as the sovereign of Yisrael who were before him. Shalmaneser, sovereign of Eshur, came up against him, and Hoshea became his servant and rendered him a present. But the sovereign of Asher found a conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, sovereign of Mitzrayim, and had not brought a present to the sovereign of Asher as year by year. And the sovereign of Asher shut him up and bound him in prison. And the sovereign of Asher went through all the land and went up to Shomron and besieged it for 3 years. And in the 9th year of Hoshea, the sovereign of Asher captured Shomron and exiled Yisrael to Asher and and settled them in Halah and Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Now this came to be because the children of Yisrael had sinned against Yahuwah, their Elohim, who had brought them up out of the land of Mitzrayim from under the hand of Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim, and feared other mighty ones, and walked in the laws of the Gentiles, whom Yahuwah had dispossessed from before the children of Yisrael, and for the sovereigns of Yisrael that they had made. And the children of Yisrael secretly did against Yahuwah, their Elohim, matters that were not right. And they built for themselves high places in all their cities, from watchtower into the walled city, and set up for themselves pillars and asherim on every high hill and under every green tree, and burned incense there all the high places like the Gentiles whom Yahuwah had removed from their presence. And they did evil matters to provoke Yahuwah, and served the idols of which Yahuwah had made to them. Do not do this. Yahuwah warned Yisrael and Yehuda through all of his prophets and every seer, saying, turn back from your evil ways and guard my commands and my laws according to all the Torah which I commanded your fathers and which I sent to you by my servants and the prophets. But they did not listen and hardened their necks like the necks of their fathers, who did not put their trust in Yahuwah, their Elohim, and rejected his laws and his covenant and that he had made with their fathers, and his witnesses which he had witnessed against them, and went after worthlessness and became worthless, and after the Gentiles who were all around them, of whom Yahuwah had commanded them not to do like them. And they left all the commands of Yahuwah, their Elohim, and made for themselves a molten image, 2 calves, and made an Asherah, and bowed themselves to all the host of Shemaim, and served Baal, and caused their sons and daughters to pass through the fire, and practiced divination and sorcery, and sold themselves to do evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, to provoke him. So Yahuwah was very enraged with Yisrael, and removed them from his presence. None was left but the tribe of Yehuda alone. Yehuda also did not guard the commands of Yahuwah, their Elohim, but walked in the laws of Yisrael, which they made. And Yahuwah rejected all the seed of Yisrael, and afflicted them, and gave them into the hand of plunderers, until he had cast them out from his presence. For he tore Yisrael from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam, son of Nebat, sovereign. And Jeroboam drove Yisrael from following Yahuwah, and made them commit a great sin. And the children of Yisrael walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did, they did not turn away from them until Yahweh removed Israel from his presence, as he spoke by all the servants, his servants, the prophets. So Yisrael was exiled from their land to Ashur, as it is to this day. And the sovereign of Ashur brought people from Babel, and from Cuspa, and from Awa, and from Hamath, and Sepharwaim, placed them in the cities of Shomron instead of the children of Yisrael. And they took possession of Shomron and dwelt in its cities. And it came to be at the beginning of their dwelling there that they did not fear Yahuwah, and Yahuwah sent lions among them, which kept on slaying among them. And they spoke to the sovereign of Ashur, saying, the nations whom you have removed and placed in the cities of Shomron did not know the right ruling of the Elohim of the land. And he has sent lions among them, and see, they are slaying among them, because they do not know the right ruling of the Elohim of the land. And the sovereign of Ashur commanded, saying, send one of the priests whom you exiled from there to go there. Let him go and dwell there, and let him teach them the right ruling of the Elohim of the land. And one of the priests whom they had exiled from Shomron came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how to fear Yahuwah. But every nation was making mighty ones of its own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Shomronites had made, every nation in the cities where they dwelt. And the men of Babel made Succoth, Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Eshima, and the Awites made Neves and Tartak, and the Sepharwites burned their children in fire to Adramelech and Anamelech, the mighty ones of Shepharim. They also feared Yahuwah, and from every class they made for themselves priests of the high places, who offered from them in the house of the high places. They were fearing Yahuwah, and they were serving their own mighty ones, according to the ruling of the nations from among whom they had been exiled. To this day they are doing according to the former rulings. They are not fearing Yahuwah, nor do they follow their laws or the right rulings, or the Torah and command which Yahuwah had commanded the children of Jacob, whose name he made Yisrael, with whom Yahuwah had made a covenant and commanded them, saying, do not fear other mighty ones, nor bow down to them, nor serve them, nor slaughter to them. But Yahuwah, who brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim with great power and with outstretched arm, him you shall fear, and to him you shall bow yourselves, and to him you shall slaughter. To guard to do forever the laws and the right rulings and the Torah and the command which he wrote for you, and do not fear other mighty ones. And do not forget the covenant that I have made with you, and do not fear other mighty ones. But fear Yahuwah your Elohim, so that he delivers you from the hand of all your enemies. And they did not obey, but did according to their former ruling. So these nations were fearing Yahuwah, and served their carved images, both their children and their children's children, as their fathers did. They are doing to this day. A lot of confusion. How can they actually fear Yahuwah when they obey other mighty ones?
Yeah. honestly, these nations that the Assyrian king puts in there instead of the Israelites that he removed, they have a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
in common with Christianity.
Yes.
They're being taught the word while they're still worshiping their other gods. So it's like
Just
you're
like
mixing the
today.
Bible with Baal worship. That's what Christianity is. So it's kind of ironic. The Samaritans, what we would know later as becoming the Samaritans, right, from verse 28 here in 29, they're kind of like the Christians. They got their Baal worship, but then they want to act like an Israelite. They want to deceive themselves into thinking they're Israel.
Just like
Hence,
today.
hence what Christianity does today. So the Samaritans and Israel, the Samaritans and Christianity go hand in hand. They're kind of under the same spirit.
Absolutely.
They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to stay worshiping Baal, but then they want to act like they're worshiping Yahuwah. And we
Yes.
see that sometimes in this walk too, where Christians come in, where a lot of us that came from the church came in, and some don't want to fully leave that baggage behind. They want to still worship their Baals. They want to still worship the host of heaven, and keep the Torah at the same time. And really, and I know you might be thinking, Doug, you're reaching with that with the host of heaven, but if you really think about it, okay, there's some in this walk that actually think Yahushua is just an angel. That's angel worship.
Yeah, I
There's
know.
this
Yeah.
walk that will believe in this, believe in that. And a lot of that has to do with Baal worship. If you believe Yahuwah has a feminine wife, or there's a divine feminine, that comes from paganism. That you're mixing astro worship with the Bible. It's the same thing. It's no different. So I know it might sound harsh what I'm saying, but that's the reality of the matter. So
Mhm.
you're mixing Babylon with the Bible is what you're trying to do. Go ahead, brother.
Now,
Yeah,
with that, with someone that believes that, would you give a harder judgment and a more strict, I'm going to stay away from you type deal to someone that is knows the scriptures, teaches the scriptures, and contorts the scriptures to make it fit that doctrine, versus someone that, when they bring that doctrine up, they believe it, but they're not basing it off the scripture. They're just kind of going on over their own mind of why they think that is, and they don't stand in the place of a teacher.
Yeah, I would say the teacher, and especially if they're varied in the word and been in here for a very long time in this walk, I would judge them very harshly, because if you've been a teacher and you've known the Bible tune back and front, you should know where those doctrines come from at some point. Versus someone like you're saying who's very possibly new, possibly not in a teaching position, that really doesn't know, that's trying to seek these things out. Yeah, that's like apples and oranges. So, but at the same time, either way, I would say they're not my brother or sister. Either way,
But
if
brother,
you-
my cousin and her husband, they know the scriptures,
Oh,
they
yeah.
know the Bible really, really well, and yet
Yeah.
still they're blinded to the truth.
Yeah, so I would say Christians in general, I don't consider my brothers. I think what Brother Yahusha's question was, are they brothers? Are they, how do we judge them? Because Israel is Israel. Christianity, they're not family anyway. So with all
And
due
when I
respect.
say know the scriptures, I mean like
Yeah.
know them for what they say, not know them like,
Yeah.
okay, this happened in this book chapter verse, this happened in this book chapter verse.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Christians really, I mean, they might be able to navigate the scriptures for apologetics, but they don't know the scriptures.
Yeah, and they're like, Christianity's a whole nother ball of wax there, because they are literally the Samaritans. Like I said, literally that's what the Samaritans were, is what Christianity is. They want to be Israel, but yet they want to keep Baal. really is what it is. And there's people in this walk that haven't fully come out of Christianity. I think that's where it intersects. What Brother Yahushua was talking about was those that are actually in this walk, not in Christianity, but in this walk, that want to claim this walk, that are still having idolatry problems like this, like where they want their Jesus and to have Yahushua at the same time, if that makes any sense. They want to have their Baal that they learned in the church and being in this walk, and they still want to serve Yahuwah and Yahushua at the same time, which you can't do. And this is why Yahushua said what he said to the woman at the well. He's like, salvation is not of you guys. It's of the Yahudim. Reason he's saying that is because she, like many of those Samaritans, were trying to mix paganism with the Bible. They were actually trying to worship their old gods and trying to keep the Torah at the same time. Now, eventually you had some, ethnic Israelite Samaritans come around, which she seemed to be, but at the same time, their religion was not pure Yahuwah worship, is what I'm trying to say. The Samaritans were half and half, and that's what Christianity is. I would say Christianity is even worse than that. They're like probably 80 paganism and 20% of it somewhat based on the New Testament. But either way, they're halfway into Baal worship, and they're trying to worship Yahuwah at the same time. So it's like you got one foot in Babylon, and then you're trying to put your other foot into the scriptures. Like, you can't do that. Yahuwah wants you to flee away from Babylon to even be in covenant with him. So I wouldn't worry too much about the Christians with this topic. I would worry more about people in this walk that are still holding on to these same belief systems. And I think that's what Brother Yahushua was trying to mention there, was what do you do? How do you judge someone that's been in this walk, not a Christian, this walk for 10, 20, 30 years? That's a shepherd that should know way better than this, that should not believe in divine feminine, that should not believe Yahushua's just an angel, that should not believe these things, versus someone that's new, kind of maybe been out of the Christian church for a year or less, that really doesn't know these things. I would, give them a lot more favor than I would give the shepherd. I mean, that should just be common sense. And that's what Yahushua did, by the way, guys. That's what Yahushua did. He did not treat everyone the same. When he went to the Pharisees, he rebuked them harshly. When he went to the crowds that didn't know better, what did he do? He showed them extra favor. Now, some people will say, well, Doug, that's not equal. That's sin. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Equality, the word equality, not biblical. So I know people are going to be mad that I'm saying this, but oh well. The Bible does not preach equality, okay? It does not preach equality for genders. Does not. It does not teach everyone's equal in the body of Messiah. It doesn't teach any of that. So, go ahead, brother.
I think too, it can always it doesn't always boil down to like how long you've been in the walk. Like, say like a person like comes into the walk, and in 3 years, their fruit is really tube. Their navigation of scripture is excellent, versus let's say someone else comes in the walk, and then 3 years later, they're still struggling with milk. And yet their fruit is excellent, or let's say their fruit is excellent, but they're still struggling with something, right? I think some people grow faster in the walk, and you can really only discern that when you've spent time with the person. That's not an excuse, but I think that Yahweh also takes that into account, that some people learn faster than others, and some people learn slower than others. But he also sees those that are just plain being stubborn and don't want to learn, and so I think that plays a part, that he will, he'll endure longer with those that are just slower learners than those that, they clearly they know it, but they refuse to do it.
Yeah. The way I look at it, for those that have those type of belief systems, I can't exactly call them my brothers. Those type of people that are still half Baal worship and halfway in this walk, they're like they're still kind of dealing with idolatry and all that. I would have to say I have to treat them almost like I would have to treat them like someone I'm trying to preach the good news to. I don't cut them off. I don't say, "Hey, I can't fellowship with you anymore." What I say is, "Listen, I don't think you're fully." I would be totally transparent with them. You're not fully in this walk yet. You're halfway in. I think you need to pray to the Father about some things because what you're believing is with all due respect, that's not scriptural, and it's actually hindering you, it's causing you to stay halfway in the mother harlot. So I think important things like that, really big doctrinal things like that, I have to keep people as an acquaintance when it comes to that. I can't call everyone in this walk a brother or sister just because they claim Yahusha and they claim to keep Torah, because then we're lowering the bar. We're lowering Yahuwah's standard about what the true good news is. We're lowering who Yahusha is, and it's a whole different story when you have someone new coming in. They just came out of the church. I get that. But for a lot out there, I see a lot of out there of seasoned people that are just believing in heretical doctrines that I would have to, as far as being buddy buddies, or like considering them my aki, whatever term you want to use, brother, sister, I would have to pump the brakes on that and just consider them, okay, they're acquaintance. Right now, I'm trying to reach out to them. I'm trying to witness to them. I'm trying to get them to understand certain things. But I think there has to be a division made. There has to be a bar set of what makes a true brother and sister. And that's great that they're bearing fruit in general, but what they believe does matter. Like that does make a brother and sister too. So, for example, if someone believes in a I'll give you an example. Someone in this walk, right, starts really getting turned down to weird doctrine, like they start believing in a Yahusha, a Yahusha that the New Agers would preach, right, or that the Gnostics would preach, that he's not the creator, he's just an ascended master, and they start getting into weird Gnostic good news accounts, but they're still trying to keep Torah and stuff.
Mhm.
I couldn't consider that a brother or sister. I would consider that person respectably. I would have to call them a Gnostic, what they are. You've become a Gnostic. You've fallen away. And, I would tell that person genuinely, I love you. I'll pray for you. You need to repent. But there's certain belief systems that they could be the most righteous as far as works go. They could have the best fruit out there, but if what they believe is extremely heretical, then they're not a brother and sister. They're someone that just has a really tube heart. And there's tons of pagans that do that stuff.
Yeah.
There's tons of pagans that do good works. It doesn't make them a brother. So I think we got to be careful not to fall into that Christian understanding of what a brother and sister is. Just because they have somewhat resemble close to what the fruit of the Spirit is does not negate the problem with the theology. It does not negate it. It does not replace it. And so honestly, that's what I truly believe. Because the thing is, your fruit you can change easily. Your fruit you can learn to bear fruit. Yahuwah can correct you on certain little things that you're not bearing fruit in. It could be very easy to do that. But if theologically, if what you believe is true is heretical and you're so gun-ho on it being correct, then that's going to be permanent. And that's so I think with fruit can change. But when someone believes that the theology they believe in is factual, it's correct when it's not, and they're completely deceived and there's scales over their eyes, you need to give that person time to seek the Father on it. And there's only so many times you can talk to them about it and try to witness to them about it before you have to let them seek the Father out. And for me personally, I just have it might seem very high standards to some, but there's certain doctrines I can't fellowship people with. One of the main things is the whole, Yahuwah having a heavenly wife. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. I cannot do, Yahusha is a ascended master type of thing, preaching another Yahusha. Can't do that.
No.
Can't do that. I can't, anyone that rejects Paul, just another example. Major theological issues, I can't fellowship people with those type of issues. I can witness to them. I can break bread with them and witness to them, because scripture doesn't say we can't do that. But as far as real communion, real fellowship, I can't do that. And that's just my stance on it. It might seem, really harsh to others, but that's where I'm at. I have to make a line in the sand when it comes to certain doctrines like that. I have to make a line in the sand. You can have love for someone and show someone love without fellowshipping with them, being best friends with them. You can show them love in other ways. You don't have to compromise what scripture says. And Paul makes it very clear. He says those that preach certain doctrines, you shouldn't even give them speed. You shouldn't. So there is a divided line. There is a divided line. Not everyone's a brother. Not everyone's a sister. And so I get the whole idea of bearing fruit. I get that. But bearing fruit, like I truly believe, cannot replace theology. It can't. Because anyone can be nice and gentle to one another. Anyone can do those things. I was raised by habit to do some of the fruits of the Spirit. So that is not what that of itself cannot make a true believer. That of itself, because I've seen Christians that do it. Does that make them a brother or sister when they're still serving JC? No. So theology has to be the first foremost thing that we're looking for, because that's what Paul talks about. He says, listen, there's only one good news. If someone brings you another good news, they are accursed. And so someone could be accursed and still replicating what seems to be certain areas of fruit of the Spirit doesn't mean they're a real believer. So there's tons of and there's also counterfeit fruit, which we talked about before. Me and Brother Yahusha have talked about before. There's counterfeit fruit. There's certain things Christians do that are similar to the fruit of the Spirit. Doesn't mean they're a true believer just because they bear fruit. Fruit is works. Works doesn't make a true believer. So that's something we need to understand. First, it's faith in the right good news. And I know Brother Yahusha he's not like disagreeing with me on this. I'm speaking this in general. Faith in the right Elohim and Messiah is first foremost to make a real believer. And faith in the right message. If you don't have the right message, you have the wrong person. You can have all the works you want. It means nothing.
Yeah.
And even on Judgment Day, it's not going to mean anything to Yahuwah if you don't believe in the right person. So theology has to come before fruit.
Yeah.
It has to. Because theology is what's getting you into who you're in covenant with. Because you could be in covenant with the wrong God and do all the nice, great, and good works. Doesn't mean anything. Faith has to come before works, always. So I know we're not disagreeing on that. I'm just I'm trying to make a point about that theology is just as important as fruit, or sometimes a little bit more than fruit. Because your theology is what you believe in your mind and is going to term who you're in relationship with.
Yeah.
Okay. So if someone doesn't know who is, doesn't know his character at all, and they're still worshiping the God that they were raised with in Christianity, they're still worshiping that God. They're not worshiping Yahuwah. So that's the point I'm trying to make. So, you had a lot of these Samaritans that were nice, that were doing two works. Yahushua never said that to her. He never said, you're not doing two works. He said, listen, you don't know who you worship. You don't even know who you worship. You're so confused, you don't know who you worship. That's the point he's making. If you actually look at the context of what Yahushua says to her, he doesn't come at her being like, you live a full life of sin. He's not talking about that. He's saying, you don't know who you worship. And the Samaritans, they worshiped Baal while trying to serve Yahuwah and learn the scriptures. So the reason I'm making this comparison is because Christianity literally is like the modern day Samaritanism. Literally. That's what it is. So anyway, that's the point I was trying to make. You know,
I think he also knew that that woman could have very well been an ancestor many generations of the Northern House.
well, he doesn't disagree with her when she says that Jacob's my relative. He doesn't
Right,
disagree with her mom. He says, yeah, you're right.
right.
You know, he
knows.
He knows that's not the point. The point is who she worships. He's like, you don't know who you worship.
Right, right.
We know who we worship, and that's the point he's getting to. Faith comes first.
Right.
Belief comes first. Who you worship matters. And
Yep.
you can believe in a creator, but if it's not the true creator, you're really not in relationship with the Father.
Right, that's right.
And that's the point. Because I know, trust me, I could go the whole list. I know Muslims that have somewhat good fruit. I know I could go down the whole list. That's not the end all be all.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say.
I know people too like that.
It's no, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say don't have good fruit at all and act like a wicked person.
No.
But what I'm trying to say is what matters to Yahuwah, what makes you in covenant with him is your faith in Yahusha, who is the true Hebrew Israelite
That's right.
Messiah who died for you,
Yeah.
not a Greco-Roman Edomite
Yeah.
Messiah that Christianity has replaced him with.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the point, is that you're not believing in the right person. So that there, if you don't have the right foundation, it's all on sand. That's what Yahusha himself says. And the foundation is not the fruit. The foundation is what you believe in. So the foundation has to come first. And like I said, because I remember learning that, you know, when I was raised in Christianity, that's a lot of times that's what all they would talk about. Good works this, good works that. But yet they didn't know who they were worshiping. All they cared about was good works this, do good deeds, do this, do that, get busy in you know, helping people. That's great to help people, but who are you in covenant with? You're focusing so much on good works. Who are you in covenant with? What is your theology like? Which Yahusha do you believe in? Do you believe in a Yahusha who the scriptures teach, or, you know, do you believe in like some, you know, version of Yahusha that lowers him down to a mere mortal man, or a version of him that makes him out to be Michael the archangel?
So
Because
does evangelizing someone or evangelizing is not really scriptural, is it?
well,
Go out and evangelize.
evangelizing, well, the point of I would say the action of itself is scriptural, but the message is the problem. The message is not the right message. They only teach what they teach is that they teach the person to believe in their lawless Christian Messiah who died for your sins on the third day. So the problem with the Christian message is, number one, they're replacing the wrong Messiah. They're replacing Yahushua with this, you know, Edomite Roman Messiah that they say died for your sins on the third day, but usually it's not preached with repentance. Number one, is not usually preached come back to the Torah, which actually that's what repentance of itself means. It means to turn away from your sin and go back to the Torah. That's actually what repentance is. So because they don't preach biblical repentance as part of that message, the message they teach is a false message. It's a counterfeit message. It's you believe he rose from the grave and now you're automatically saved. So I would say, sis, the action of itself is not the problem. What they're doing, the message that they bring is the problem. The actual message of it and who they're preaching is the issue. Not that preaching of itself is bad, not that evangelizing of itself is bad, because all evangelizing is doing, you're walking on the street talking to someone. That's not sinful, but the problem is they're deceiving people. The problem is that they bring them into a false religion. That's what Christianity is. It's a false pagan religion, you know, with Gnostic influences and philosophy in it. And so they're bringing them into that, and they're teaching another Yahusha. So they're breaking Galatians 1:8 and 2 Corinthians 11. That's what Christianity is. It's another Basora. It's a false Basora. It's another Basora. So I would say, though, those people that come into this walk, and I'm not trying to judge harshly, but if you still believe in any part of that message still, I would say the fruit has to come later. If you if you still believe you were saved, on this day, that day of 1987 or 1960, 1940, you're still in the false basora. So what our fruit can only benefit us if we're in the root. The fruit is supposed to be a result of genuine salvation. So the fruit comes later. The fruit always should come later. So I wouldn't be so concerned about fruit with a believer more than what they believe first, especially if they're new to the faith. I would be more concerned with what they believe. And I do believe fruit is important, but the fruit could come, and then if one of their belief is all jacked up and not scriptural at all, as far as their core beliefs is all messed up, the fruit doesn't really matter to you because they're not serving him. If they believe in a creator that has a heavenly wife, if they believe in a creator that, is not equal to his son is a normal mortal being, a created being, that Yahusha is not equal with the Father, he's a mortal being, or he's an angel, this or that, that's not really, the fruit is not really going to do, fruit doesn't save us. Fruit is a result of genuine faith that will, that is basically proving that you are really in Yahusha. So it's a proof of something. It's not the root of something. So I think sometimes we get confused with that too. And I don't think Brother Yahusha was trying to say that at all. I'm just speaking in general that we need to remember too, theology comes first. Mm-hmm. Theology comes first because theology is the fruit can always come. Because if Yahuwah's spirit is in us, he's going to naturally produce fruit from us anyway, right? So the fruit's going to come. But theology, that's of us to get the right theology. That's of us to rightly divide his word. That's our job. If we're not doing that, number one, we're in sin. Number two, we're allowing demons to deceive us. And even with the falling away, Yahuwah doesn't say those that bear fruit are going to not, there's no way that someone that bears fruit won't become part of the apostasy. Yahuwah says those that did not believe in the truth. The truth is doctrine. The truth is theology. So I think sometimes a lot of us, I don't think intentionally, but unintentionally in our subconscious, we tend to push theology. And I'm not accusing anyone here of doing that. I'm just saying in general, sometimes we push theology as like it's not as important as bearing fruit, and which couldn't be farther from the truth. It's very important. It's very important because your theology is going to depend on whether you're in Yahuwah or Yahusha or not. I truly believe if someone is in Yahuwah and in Yahusha, there's going to be core beliefs that they don't waver on. There should be core beliefs that they don't waver on if they're truly in Yahuwah, in Yahusha. If they're still halfway in the church, there could be something showing that, like some of the doctrines they believe in, some of the understandings of scripture might show that there's a spirit there deceiving them. There's a spirit there that they haven't fully renounced the Christian church. And that could be why Yahuwah is allowing blinders on their eyes. It's a very good possibility that's why they're struggling with these things. Because from what I've seen from people that bear fruit and are really in this walk, there are certain beliefs that they have. And to me, there are certain really heretical doctrines that you should not have that are very, very obvious what scripture shows, the truth about, that you should not, at a certain point, you shouldn't be struggling with. Let me reword that. At a certain point, you should not be struggling with certain belief systems. So, for, like literal creation, 6 days of creation, like literal things that are just there in black and white that you can't take your own personal interpretation of. I do think there's certain things that, people are still working on with the oneness thing and this and that and this and that. But there's things that are very obvious in scripture. It's very obvious, in scripture who the creator is. It's very obvious.
Mhm.
Whether you want to believe Yahusha is Yahuwah, you still, if you really are in him, you should be able to see from the New Testament alone, Yahusha is the one that was with the Father creating everything, because that's what Paul says. That's what John says.
Mhm.
It's very clear. It says by the word,
Mhm.
by wisdom, he created. So it's very clear what stuff like that should not really be a debate in the body of Messiah right now. It really shouldn't. Stuff like that should be obvious. Like as far as Yahusha being pre-existent, born of a virgin, these are core beliefs that we need to have. If we're really in Yahusha, we should have. We should, we should not be arguing about whether he was born as a virgin. We should not be arguing about whether he pre-existed or not when it's extremely clear in the Old and New Testament that he pre-existed. He's not a created being. It's very clear. So I would say those that are struggling with it, from what I've seen, there are bigger things at work spiritually with those individuals. There's something that we're not seeing that's on the surface. There's something spiritually going on. And a lot of them are not fully out of Christianity. I'm not trying to say that as a knock, but a lot of them are not fully out of the church. They're equating Jesus with Yahusha.
Yeah.
Some of them. So we also have to realize too, if someone is still equating Yahusha with Jesus, can I consider that a brother or sister? Or is that more of an acquaintance? Or is that more of someone I just need to minister to and witness to and bear with, but not exactly consider them a ak of mine?
Mhm.
Because if you're associating Jesus with Yahusha, then you're trying to blend Baal with Yahuwah, and you're not fully in this walk like the Samaritans were. The Samaritans weren't really fully in the walk. The Samaritans were, trying to still worship Baal. And if you're still trying to worship Baal, you can't even enter into covenant with Yahuwah. One of his top commandments is have no other gods.
Mhm.
That's like number one. So, it's like that's prerequisite to enter covenant. Exodus 20 was prerequisite. So I think sometimes we forget about too, at the covenant of Sinai, there were terms they had to agree to. So if someone has not put away the idol of JC, the idol of Hashem, Adonai, Jehovah, whatever you want to call the gods of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, if they're still holding on to them, that's not someone that's really fully entered covenant, number one. So you don't even have the option to consider them a brother. What we can consider them is someone that maybe Yahuwah has chose us to minister to at most, but we can't consider someone a brother that doesn't worship the same Elohim. I can't. And that's what Deuteronomy 13 talks about when it talks about a false prophet. It talks about that another mighty one can be defined as simple as this: a mighty one that has another Torah other than the Torah Yahuwah gave. So, word of mouth is not what confirms someone as a true believer. Like I always say, you can say you believe in Yahuwah, you believe in Yahusha, you desire to obey his Torah. That doesn't make you a true believer right away. That just by you stating it does not make you a true believer. Like, it's not just fruit. Part of it is fruit. Part of it should be bearing fruit. That's how Yahusha said, judge them by them fruits. But also you want to see what does a person believe when they say that. You're like, okay, who do you think Yahuwah is? Who do you think Yahusha is? And if their answer is something like way off base, I don't think I can consider that person a brother or sister. It might be someone that desires to be in relationship with Yahuwah and Yahusha, truly desires, but has not fully come into covenant yet. So that would be like, in context, that would be when Paul goes to the Gentiles, right? And you got these Gentiles that are so excited about the Torah and all that, but they're still not fully converted yet. They're kind of like, they got a little taste of the word and they're like, ooh, I like this, I want to accept this. And then you tell them, come back next week. And you continue to minister to them until they fully receive the true good news. But until they fully receive the true good news and leave that old faith behind, the old religion that they had behind, they're not a real genuine believer yet. Like I said, they could have the kindest heart. kindest
Yeah,
person.
it's true.
A kind heart does not make a believer. It should be, don't get me wrong, it should be a requisite of a believer, proof of a believer, but that of itself
No.
does not make a believer. That's what I truly believe. It has to be, it really ultimately should be a package deal with the theology, but the theology and faith should come first. And so that's what I truly believe. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I truly believe. Go ahead,
What
bro.
you say? What you said makes sense. I'm wondering about just like when you read through Acts, right? I'm wondering if these people in Acts 2, or let's say let's not use Acts 2. Let's use further on with the Gentiles, right, that are preached to. Do they fully understand who Yahuwah is and who he's not? And then two, I would say, like, was their theology on point, or did they have to go like even after becoming a believer, continue to go and be taught?
I would say it was easier back then because you didn't have, like, Christianity was still in its infancy. Like, I don't even think it possibly was a thing back then. You just had the Gnostics and you had the Nazarene or whatever. So it was very obvious who the true creator was at that point. Once Paul would preach to them, they understood it. Okay. Even Paul said to them, he's like, you got all these gods, he went to Ephesus and everything. He's like, you got all these deities, all these gods, but I'm going to tell you about the unknown Elohim. All he had to say was unknown Elohim, and then he started giving them the Basora message. And those that received it, I would say, as far as theologically concerned, all they needed to know was what the true Basora was, and they were fine. That's kind of what I look at in the Brit Hadashah. That's a prerequisite. As long as you have the right person and the right message, that's what causes you to enter covenant. Problem today is we got Christianity has usurped the scriptures and has twisted the scriptures to the point that those that desire to know Yahuwah, a lot of them have received a whole nother good news. So they actually have to unlearn the good news that they've learned from a apostle of Satan, you could say. And now they have to do what the Gentile did one time, if that makes any sense. So the Gentiles didn't have to worry about that in Paul's time because there was no Catholicism yet. There was no, like, for what we got to understand historically is it was a different setting. You had the Nazarene and the Gnostics. Those were the two groups. You had the Nazarene who were followers of Yahusha through Paul. They taught the true good news right away. So
basically, in a nutshell, you didn't have another mighty one claiming to be the mighty one of the Hebrew scriptures.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah. So basically the devil, I think he saw what was happening with the Nazarene. He's like, all right, I got to be more crafty because these guys are converting all the Yahudim. The Yahudim are, they're getting away from Phariseeism and Sadduceeism. I got to do something. So I think the devil's plot was really to, like you said, create a counterfeit Gentile version of Yahuwah in the flesh and use the Gnostics, because the Gnostics, to be fair, they were not big in 60, 70 AD. They didn't really get started until like maybe 100 to 200 AD was where they were big. They started deceiving a lot of people. So I would say around 200 AD would be closer to what we're dealing with now, where you had like the 2nd century was really bad. That's where you had all this deception coming in. And so I would say around that time after Paul died and the apostles died, that's where the trouble started. And Paul even warned us. He said, listen, after my departure, there's going to be those that don't spare the flock. They're going to come in. And so after that, historically, that's where really I would say the origin of Christianity was from like 100 AD to 200 AD. From those 200 years, the seeds of Satan's plot of Christianity was being seeded and being, sowed in among the Gentiles that, listen, you don't have to be Hebrew. Why do you have to do what they have to do? You can have your cake and eat it too. And that's how the
Mhm.
devil gets people. He's like, oh, you could stay a Gentile. And Christianity still has that spirit today. Oh, I'm not. If you don't say you're a Gentile, you dishonor God. I've heard it all myself. This is stuff that people have said to me. Oh, you're dishonoring God by calling yourself an Israelite and all that.
Mhm.
There's a anti-Abri, whatever you want to call it, Israelite spirit in
Mhm.
Christianity. It is almost like an Edomite spirit. And so Satan has used Christianity to deceive many people, many well-meaning, not trying to attack any Christian here, well-meaning people, a lot of well-meaning people, will go to the lake of fire because they've been deceived into that. And because, if they don't receive the true good news from someone like us, they're choosing the lie. And it's that simple. But anyway, that's all I was trying to say was theology must come before fruit. Like, it's great to have fruit, don't get me wrong. That's our job. That's our job in covenant, is to bear fruit to Yahuwah. That's why Yahushua elected us, right? Predestined us from the foundation of the world to do that. But if we throw away our theology, we won't even be in covenant. It's a possibility we won't even be in covenant to the one that we want to bear fruit to.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. That's the only point I was trying to make, was that faith always comes first. Theology always comes first. And what the devil has done, I've noticed in this Hebrew roots movement, like I said, I'm not accusing anyone here of it, but in general, this Hebrew roots movement has pushed aside theology for unity for the sake of unity. That's a hippie spirit. That is a hippie religious spirit. Oh, we all got to get it. We all are brothers and sisters. No, we're not. Yahuwah himself, through Paul, says there are those that are approved, those are not. And Paul, when he says those are not, he's not talking about the world. He's talking about those in certain sects or groups that are not approved. So that's why I say it's not as black and white as, oh, someone comes up to me saying, I believe in Yahusha, I guard the Torah, automatically that's a brother. I don't look at it like that. I look at, what do they actually believe? Because the Gnosticism, even in this walk, is gaining some ground. I'm seeing even teachers out there, they're using Gnostic avenues to deceive people, and they're being deceived, deceiving others, or they're intentionally deceiving others. Either way, they're using Gnosticism to get more people to flock after them and be deceived.
Yeah.
And you have I know at least two ministries. I'm not going to name names, but I know at least two ministries in this walk, not in Christianity, in this walk, using elements of Gnosticism in their theology. So I can't call someone that does that a brother. I can't,
I'll say name the names.
well,
Name the name.
I have no problem. So there's this recent person that Marissa kind of showed me that was doing this. I totally forgot about this person. Their name is the person's name is Joel Hadley or Noel Hadley. I forget his exact full name. He runs a whole ministry called Unexpected Cosmology or whatever. He teaches a lot of weird Gnostic and also the Tartarian Empire thing. There's that is gaining ground in this walk. The whole Tartarian 70 AD millennial. All these false doctrines usually come from Gnosticism. I find it, interestingly enough. These type of doctrines are usually from a Gnostic spirit or someone that's partly Gnostic or still Christian. Like,
Yeah,
even
but
though,
don't forget that he's also teaching that Yeshua already came.
Oh yeah.
the Mary Magdalene thing was a big problem for me too. The Mary Magdalene being his wife thing, the Holy Grail thing,
Boy.
which is very Catholic, by the way, very Gnostic in Catholic
Yeah.
theology. In origin, very Gnostic. There, Dave Brown in the movie The Da Vinci Code kind of hints around about it in that painting. When they talk about the truth behind Leonardo da Vinci's painting and all that. So these are Gnostic heresies that are creeping in. I would say Joel Hadley and Parable of the Vineyard, as we warned people before, are two ministries that preach elements of Gnosticism, maybe not full Gnostic, but elements of it. Yahusha just being a righteous preacher, or Yahusha being a spiritual leader, but not the creator himself. That's
Mhm.
Gnosticism.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone that tells you that he was just a righteous prophet, but he was nothing else, that is denying.
Mhm.
That is denying what the Brit Hadashah teaches. So this is a big deal. This is like, and this is getting more popular, more popular, more popular. I'm even seeing people in this walk that are becoming full on Gnostic, that actually are believing in the whole demiurge nonsense. They're trying to use the Bible to say that the Bible, like promotes Gnosticism, or trying to say that the Bible shows Yahuwah as being the enemy. So there's people that were originally so-called Nazarene that are now becoming Gnostic. So this is a big deal. Yahuwah, I believe Yahuwah is showing us now who are really his, like he says in scripture. That's why when someone says to me, well, if they bear fruit, I'm not saying anyone here has said this to me, but if someone says something to me like, well, they bear fruit and they seem to be a brother and they claim to be, be Yahuwah's. The thing is, Yahuwah decides who are really his.
Mhm.
That's the thing. That's what we misunderstand, is the book of Numbers. When you talk about the rebellion of Korah, don't you think Korah was claiming to be Yahuwah's? They were saying the same thing.
Mhm.
And what did Yahuwah say to Moshe to give to them? He said, tell them that I decide who are really mine.
That's right.
He elects us. We don't elect ourselves.
Mhm.
So this is the problem, is that we have rejected the biblical doctrine of predestination for too long. This is part of the problem. This is part of the problem. We've rejected true scriptural election, what election actually means, and what predestination really means. And that's why we're confused about this. We're thinking everyone's a brother, everyone's a sister, when Masha himself, if he was today, would tell you otherwise.
Mhm.
All the Israelites of Masha's time period understood that Yahuwah does the choosing,
Mhm.
and he's the one that says who's really of him or not. So anyway, hopefully, guys, this was edifying to those hearing this, and have a great rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat shalom, everyone.